Hey, Philip Gregory here again with Philip Gregory Speaks. It's my second video. I'm just doing a quick little, sorry, I dropped my notebook there. Doing a quick little overview of a topic I thought needed some mentioning. Eventually I'll be doing some video responses here and things like that with a little more detail and stuff. And obviously that the written blog will have some more organized things. These videos are more for just a little talking a little bit about certain topics that come to mind while I'm writing, or things that people ask me to do videos on, which is the case with this one. And obviously the book all religious thought is harmful that I'm writing will be much more detailed. But today I thought I would mention something that comes up a lot in my discussions with people concerning religion. And I have to say, this one's a bit of a pet peeve for me because it's kind of insulting, and it happens. Actually, it's really insulting if you think about it, but it happens to me all the time. And that is when you disagree with a religious claim, if you're an atheist or agnostic or any kind of unbeliever, and you say I've read the same Bible you've read. Let's just take Christianity for these examples, but I've read the same Bible you've read. I know the same stories of Jesus. I have researched everything that I could find to research, and you don't have any more, meaning the religious, don't have any more incredible intellect above and beyond mine. It's not just because they're religious doesn't mean they somewhat have some higher levels of thinking that we're not capable of possessing. But and so we're on equal ground here, but I come to a different belief, meaning I don't believe the claims that the supernatural claims of the Bible. Well, then the response from the religious, almost unfailingly, is well, you have the wrong heart condition, or you don't want a God because you don't want someone telling you what to do. And I think that is the epitome of arrogance and judgmentalness, and the reason why I bring it up is because I think it's this ironic thing where we are told we are arrogant because we know everything, and that we don't want God because we're so arrogant, and not only that, but something's wrong with us. Something's wrong. We are not. We don't have a good enough heart, not as good as the religious person. We have a defective heart because we are not being drawn to God. Where that scripture from the Bible that says that God is drawing those with the right heart condition to Him, right? So, and that's the religious response. Of course, it's directly. This type of thinking is directly repeated from the Bible. It's not an original thought. It's a regurgitated thought that's been indoctrinated into anybody who subscribes to Christianity, because that's what the apostles say, right? Okay, but all that aside, I would like to explain, not to jab at the religious, but maybe to give a little insight to someone who might be throwing this kind of statement out to someone without thinking about the results of saying something like you have the wrong heart condition and that's why you're not getting it. If someone makes a claim, and what I'm going to do here is explain why the atheist and the agnostic or the unbeliever would come to a different place than you, putting aside the idea that it's just because they're arrogant, because that's not why. The reason is because there's a scale, and a person who thinks there's a fork on the road, first of all, between the person who accepts something, gets to the end of the road, and says, "I've got all the evidence I can get, but it's not enough to prove something. It's not enough to make it necessarily true. But I'm gonna believe it anyway because it inspires me, because it makes sense to me," which is not the same thing as it being logical, but it seems like it fits the bill, and they say, okay, I'm gonna go with that. And then there's the other type of person that says, well, that's great, it does seem like it fits the bill, it does inspire me, it does exhibit some certain morals, although the morals of the Bible are questionable, but it does exhibit these other things that you see that make you subscribe to it. However, I reserve judgment because I require more. I require more evidences. Right? Well, why? Why does the one require more evidences and the other person doesn't? Well, it's because one person has a scale in their mind, a scale of proof. And it cuts out whether it's common sense. Cut that out. If you have a small claim, and this is the way this is my personal belief, and so of course it differs from person to person, but I'm fairly confident that those who subscribe to empiricism, skepticism, any kind of unbelief, this is why they do this, is because rather than just believe anything without any sort of benchmark, or just with some things but not enough, they have a definite scale. If the claim is small, then the evidence required is small. If the claim is large, then the evidence required to prove the claim is large. If the claim is astronomically on the tip top of the scale, which is where God is sliding off the chart, then the evidence required is astronomical, right? The bigger the claim, the more evidences that are required, and I'm sure everybody's heard that before. But that means in order to require that, to say what to recognize this is a large claim, it comes outside this thing that's supposed to have happened, is way outside any verifiable things that in any experience of my own has ever seen, or experience that's ever been documented in history. It's something that does not mesh with the natural laws and what we know about the universe, and that's why they call it supernatural. That's what a miracle is: suspension of the natural order. That's a huge claim. So in order to not believe that, the first thing you got to do is disbelieve and say, I need more evidences to believe this, which means you have to have a lot of doubt. You have to severely doubt that claim. And as you go up this scale for how much evidence is required, you also have doubt increasing. So if you could picture this on a graph, and you've got this line, and well, let's, do I have a pen? I can draw it out for you. Here, I've got a pen. Let me draw this out for you. You've got a graph where you have a line, and there's a small claim at the bottom, and up this hill and to the top of, say, God is the largest claim. And so up at the top you need more evidence. At the bottom you need less evidence, right? Pretty self-explanatory. But also at the top you have more doubt. So you picture it like this, and there's these dual things, and one of them is doubt, and one of them is evidence. This is what's going on in the mind of an unbeliever. Whereas I think what's going on with the religious, whether they accept this or not, or whether they realize this is happening or not, is that they get to the same place where you have this extraordinary claim, where there should be more evidence required and there should be more doubt. But instead, the religious are sitting on absolute certainty. They're sitting on no evidence. They're sitting on purely subjective experiences, right? Like someone who says, what was the religious movie with Bill Maher, whatever his name is, where the guy says, he asked him, what made you become a believer? Well, I prayed for rain. I stuck my head outside the window and it rained. Well, great. That's no kind of evidence at all. That's a feeling that arose within you, a subjective revelation in your head, but it's not necessarily true that rain came because of God. There's no evidences to prove that. That's just a personal belief because of an emotional reaction, and because of conclusions that were drawn without using this scale. Okay, so if you don't use the scale, that's fine, and that's a different type of thinking, but don't sit and judge the person who does. You can't say something's wrong with you because you use a different method of coming to your conclusions than I do. It doesn't. The cold hard truth of it is there is no evidence to prove God. There is no evidence to disprove God. And if an atheist is on the side saying there is, then he's just as much wrong as the religious who's saying there isn't. At this time, we have no ability to do that. And so the person that gets to the end of this scale here and sits on certainty and says, no, there is a God. And by the way, it's the God of the New Testament and Old Testament. And by the way, there's one specific way to salvation. And not only do I know this God exists and the nature of this God and which God it is, but I know exactly what he wants for us. I know exactly your way to save your children from hell or torment or whatever the doctrine is, depending on the version of Christianity. And if you don't do these things, then something's wrong with you and you'll be destroyed. Well, I'm sorry, that doesn't make any sense to me. Not only is it completely illogical, but it just doesn't even make any common sense, because all that's happening here is two different people with the same access to information, the same abilities as far as intellect, the same equal playing field. And one comes up and says, this information is not enough for me because I use a different path of getting to my conclusion, and that's not enough for that conclusion to be proof positive for me. And the other person says, well, it's good enough for me. And maybe I don't have these things that you require, but I don't require those things. I'm perfectly fine with just reading the Bible and seeing prophecy fulfillment, although, again, I don't see any prophecies that are being fulfilled, but they do. And so they look at those things from their viewpoint of already believing, because they've just accepted that they don't have to have evidence. Now, if you don't believe me when I say this, I could tell you from my experience of arguing religion that I've heard statements such as reason and intellect and logic should never come before faith. I've had that said many, many, many times. Now, to me, that's absolutely asinine. That is crazy talk, okay? And that is something that makes me go, whoa, what is happening to the state of humanity here when we say things like this, okay? But to the person I was talking to, it made absolute perfect sense. Faith comes first, right? Faith comes first, then the reason and the intellect and the requiring of the evidences and whatever. And I think that's what's happening, is they have a completely different path of thinking that they're going down to get to these conclusions. Now, is that okay? Is that okay to say, all right, you got a completely different path, I got a completely different path, and have fun believing whatever you believe, and just, go ahead, it's your right to believe that. I would say no, it's not okay. Just like it's not okay for me to believe that running the streets, raping people, and murdering them is okay. Okay, there's certain things that beliefs, because beliefs are the beginning of actions. Okay, so there's certain beliefs that their actions, the result of those beliefs, are so damaging to the rest of the human beings that are living here on Earth, that we shouldn't necessarily be allowed to run around believing them in any way we want and turning those into actions. Now, can somebody believe whatever they want inside their own head? Of course, they can. You can, and you couldn't stop them if you tried. So, I'm not trying to do that. I'm just hoping some people will maybe agree with me eventually. But can you stop people from putting that belief on the American money? Yes. Can you stop people from putting that belief into education systems? Yes. And why shouldn't it be in education systems? That's maybe a whole nother video. Why shouldn't it be? Because there's no evidences to support it. And you shouldn't teach things as fact that have no support to warrant that belief. Unless it's pretty damn sure that it's right. And now people will come and they'll say there's no evidence for evolution and so on and so forth. And to that I say you're misinformed. There are plenty of evidences, and it's not a few people. It's a teams of scientists and people who don't get to just publish whatever they want. It's meticulously gone through. There is evidence supporting natural selection at the least, and possibly evolution. And so that's a whole nother debate we can get into later. But that's why that's allowed to be taught in schools, and it should be, because as we sit now on the evidences we have now, that seems to be what have happened. When new evidences come that disprove that or prove it, then we'll change our stance at that point. But the point is we're relying on this scale, right? We're relying on this scale. And the religious is not. They're throwing that scale away and saying, sounds great to me. Now, why do they do that is my question, and I'm going to wrap up here because we could get off on a whole lot of other topics. But why do they do that and then turn around and call the person who doesn't believe arrogant? They do that because they are arrogant. Okay? And that's the irony of the whole thing, is they're calling someone arrogant when in fact they're in the act of doing that, proving themselves to be arrogant. Because if you look at the scale, like I said, doubt is up here with God, right? The larger the claim, the more doubt is required to find evidence, so that you can find evidences. To first believe something, you must disbelieve, right? If we just believed everything, that we would still think the earth was flat. Someone had to disbelieve, say, I don't believe that. Let me now gather evidences to see if it's true. And then if it proves to be true, then I'll believe it. Okay? Well, that requires a lot of doubt. Whereas the person who says, I know God, I know exactly which God it is, and I know exactly what he wants for you, is bathing in certainty. They're at the top of the scale, but they're wrapped in certainty. And that is a contradictory place that we should never allow our minds to get to, because if we do that, we can do it with anything. We can justify anything, because we can just be certain, even though there's no evidences for our beliefs, or there's no reason why we should be doing what we're doing. We'll just do it anyway because we're already certain. And that's the problem. Is, like I said, those people, when they say that to me, faith comes before reason and intellect and evidence is, they're absolutely right. That's exactly what's happening. Faith is coming. And faith is believing something without those evidences, without the doubt, without the requirements of making sure that there is a high probability that it's true before you believe it. It could be absolutely no evidence whatsoever, and they could believe it if you start with faith. And that's why you've got so many different kinds of religions. So, but anyway, there's a lot more I could say into that. I know I'm blowing over things. There's a lot of holes. I realize that. But that's just a kind of basic overview of a phenomenon I see happening all the time whenever I debate somebody with religion. Is I immediately get called arrogant. I immediately get called and told I have the wrong heart condition, and I think that thing needs to stop, and the religious need to realize that it's not anything to do with a heart condition. It's not anything to do with an independent spirit. It has to do with a different requirement that we hold ourselves to for believing or not believing something, and the religious can decide if that's better or not than their own. For me personally, and for many thousands of people who are unbelievers, that is the most important thing that should determine for us what we believe, because it cuts out our subjectivity and allows us to make a rational, logical decision.